To week 6 of the semester. So you just finished your narrative assignment, and the goal behind that assignment was to situate yourself as a writer and to think about a particular topic that matters to you and what your perspective is. It's like establishing your place in an overall conversation. And now we're going to expand that to start looking at other people who might be in that same conversation and what they might be saying. And so the next step in our process here is to think about two things: rhetorical analysis and rhetorical evaluation. And we've talked about this in some ways throughout the semester because everything in writing has to do with rhetoric. And if you want to summarize rhetoric in a simple way, it's how a text interacts with a specific audience. In order to do this well, as we think about moving toward the argument assignment, what we're going to be completing in this unit over the next several weeks is a rhetorical analysis and evaluation. Now, those may sound like some terms, and you've probably heard those before, or at least you're familiar with them, or even if you haven't, they're not scary terms or anything like that. We're going to walk through all of those steps so that you can see not just how you can communicate better, but how others can communicate better too. And the whole point of that is to think about, in a situation, at least in this analysis and evaluation stage, is if you were to enter into a similar rhetorical situation, how would you construct an argument? A lot of times you'll read arguments that are not well constructed or that you would do something differently. That's what this assignment is all about, is for you to start thinking about how you might approach something through analyzing other people's work. So let me walk through everything here for this week. There's a good bit of content here on the front end of this assignment because we're introducing some terms that you're going to be using. So just hang with me here during this video, and I think you'll have explanations for everything. But if not, you're always welcome to email me, cmoody@aum.edu. And also, I'm working from the home office today, which is also the home schoolroom. And you can see that my board behind me also has some rhetorical terms up there that we're going to discuss, but a map of the U.S. and some various spelling things. So that's there, for, I guess, for your viewing pleasure as well. So let's dive into what this week is going to involve. So the first thing that I would want you to do is actually start at the end and look at the assignment 2, which is the evaluation. So this is the next big assignment that we're working on. So you just did a narrative assignment. Now we're in the world of an analysis and evaluation. And it's important that you see that as two separate things. Analysis and evaluation often run together. But by separating them, what we're really working on is having the tools through which we can analyze something. I don't know if you've ever heard somebody say, like, I don't like this, and you ask them why, and they say, I just don't. That's not a compelling reason. But if someone says, I don't like this, you ask why, and they explain, here are the reasons why, then that is a compelling reason. And so what we're doing is, the first thing is learning some terms and learning how to analyze a text in terms of rhetoric, and then you're going to evaluate how well that a text does in that rhetorical situation. And it's the same rhetorical situation that your narrative was going to enter into, or ultimately your argument. So all of this is building toward that space of asking that same question that you can ask here in any class that you go to from this point forward. How do I communicate well in a given environment? The idea there is that doesn't mean that people are going to necessarily accept what you have to say, but you want the reason for them not accepting you to be about the things in the content of your work, not necessarily how you approached it. In other words, if people want to deny what you have to say, that's fine. But we don't want to give them room to deny it just because we didn't approach it in the right way. So we want to do our work as speakers and writers in any given situation to say, what is the best way to approach writing a text, a speech, or anything? How do I enter into that situation well? And that's what this whole section is about. So that's where we're heading with the assignment. And I also want to look quickly at this rhetorical analysis because it is the assignment that is due at the end of this week. So just a quick refresher: when you're doing assignments on Blackboard, you click on the link, and then it brings up this thing, and then you click here, continue attempt 1, and it'll say start attempt 1, and then this will explain to you what you need to be doing this week. So I'm asking you to do a brief rhetorical analysis. So it's a 1-page double-spaced rhetorical analysis of the text. pick one of these articles that sounds of interest to you. It does not have to be about the same topic you wrote your narrative about. If you want to, that's great. And I've tried to pick these articles based on some of the things that you guys have mentioned as important in your narrative. So you might see some familiarity there, or you might be interested in a new topic altogether. So pick one of these articles, read it, and then analyze it based on these terms here that we're going to talk about in just a second. Purpose, context, audience, and message, which is the rhetorical situation, and the author's rhetorical appeals, which the three main ones are ethos, pathos, and logos. And explain that in your writing. Again, it's 300 words, about a page, double spaced, and that will be the assignment for this week, and it is due by the end of the week on Friday. So my goal with this assignment is just to get you more familiar with using these rhetorical terms, so that you know how you can then deploy them in your own writing as we move forward in this sequence. So let's go briefly through the learning materials, or the instruction materials, for this week. So you've got a video on rhetorical analysis here. I'm going to press pause so it doesn't play, by a rhetoric professor that's actually really helpful. And as you read through our shared textbook, the Pressbook side, you'll see these videos linked. That's what they're there for. But this is a rhetorical analysis that explains more of what you're doing in this class. But what I really appreciate about this video is it explains the understanding of why this stuff matters and why it's important in some real world situations. So I think it will be very helpful, especially because these guys are just really good at what they do. And then you can click on this rhetorical occasion video. It's actually scroll down to right here. Now, this is about the AP English language exam, which some of you may be familiar with. So I wouldn't focus as much on the AP language portion of this as much as I would just recommend looking at the terms that they use, so that you can see how we're going to use this in a rhetorical analysis this week, and then as you move forward into an evaluation. So take a look at both of those videos, and then you're going to look at this. And this is just a quick article that explains what we would call the rhetorical situation. So you can see it here, that it's this relationship between purpose, which is the why of your writing, audience, to whom are you writing, author, who you are as a writer, and then the message and how it interacts with these three things. And so if you hear the idea of rhetorical situation or rhetorical context, that's what matters. And the idea here is that everything that you write, everything that you speak, everything that you present in any given context is going to have this going on. There will always be some kind of, there will always be some kind of purpose, the reason why you're saying something, even if it's just to share information. You will always be speaking to a particular person. And and we're talking about you, the speaker, but you have something that you're getting across. And in each case, you are going to deploy rhetorical appeals in order to effectively approach that. So as you click this article here, where it talks about tone, language, and appeal, and like here, there's some great examples between formal and conversational tone, language, and how it's especially useful. And I want to make a quick note about grammar in this situation, because look, I get it. Like, one of my struggles as a writer, even run with a PhD, is on those little small grammatical errors that seem to just seem to get right. Like, I can't tell you the last time I wrote even a paragraph that I didn't have to go back and review and correct some kind of comma error. It's like the bane of my existence, this thing I can't figure out, and it's sort of embarrassing for me. It's like, you're an English teacher. How in the world do you not know how to use commas effectively? But I tell you that so that you will feel comfortable with the fact that you don't have to use know how to use commas exactly right every time. What you need to know is how to review and revise your work. And the reason why is because language matters in a rhetorical situation. Ultimately, language has to do with credibility. You want to maintain your credibility with your audience at any given moment. And if you come in with errors all over the place, then it's really hard for your audience to take you seriously as a writer, right? And I know this just as much as anybody else. And imagine me if I was filming this video and I had some kind of big stain on the top of my shirt right here, like it was just orange, like I got after some of those, like some candy corn and those Halloween pumpkins that are popular right now, and just kind of had it all over my face and all over my shirt. Now, is there anything wrong with me eating Halloween candy? Not at all. In fact, Halloween Oreos, I think, are maybe the greatest cookie of all time. But the point of it is, if I have it all over my shirt, if I have it all over my face, you are not going to take me serious on this video. You'll be like, what's happening with this dude? It looks like a mess. And so even though as I'm trying to talk to you about things that are important to you, and I might be correct, it doesn't matter. You're not likely to listen to me because I have all this over my face and my shirt. And that's why something like language matters. How appropriate are you approaching a specific audience? Are you thinking through what you're trying to say? And are you slowing down to say whether or not your writing is effective? And so that's why something like grammar matters, so that you can understand exactly why or exactly what you need to be doing and why it's important to say it in the right context. If I can't follow what you're trying to say because of the errors, that's ultimately not a reader problem, that's a writer problem, and that's something that you've got to pay attention to. So you see some references here to tone, language, and appeals. Now, when we talk about appeals, I wanted to break down a little bit here, and it does so in this article briefly, but I wanted to quickly explain to you what is meant by what we call the three major rhetorical appeals. So we have them listed up here on the board: ethos, pathos, and logos. Now, ethos, immediately, if you see that word, you might immediately think of the term ethics. And though they are a similar origin, don't fall into that trap of just thinking it has to do with ethics. It has to do with the credibility of a speaker in a specific context. So I have credibility in this class because I have a PhD in English Lit, and I have a background in rhetoric and teaching composition in both in my job history and my research. And AUM has deemed me as an appropriate person to teach this class. They have bestowed upon me the authority to teach an English composition class. I do not have that same authority in a biology class, right? Because I don't have a background in that. I don't have any research in that. And AUM has not deemed me as authoritative to teach in a biology class, though I might be very interested in it. I'm not. But if you get, I hope you can see the point is that might think, if you could say just about me, like, oh, AUM professor, then I could walk around all the class and I can bust up in Goodwin Hall and be like, I'm Professor Moody, I'm Dr. Moody, I can do this in the biology department. And the students in biology classes would laugh me out of the room, and they should, because I do not have the credibility to speak in that environment. So think about that. How does an author not only have credibility but establish her credibility? Do they have some by what we call intrinsic credibility, by position, by research topic, by background? Or do they have a stated credibility? I've done this research, I've talked to these people, I have a background in this specific thing. And some of you, like it, I'm talking specifically in the academic context, but some of you are writing about situations having to do with the family. If you come from a divorced family like I do, and you're speaking about divorce, you have credibility because you can say, this is what my family situation was like. That's why the narrative that you wrote can matter in such effective ways. Next, we're going to talk about pathos, which is emotion, right? The emotional appeals, like when you really get tugged at the heartstrings. So the greatest example I can think of is this, and you can find this on YouTube. It's from a few years ago, but there's an artist that was really popular back in the day called Sarah McLachlan, and her songs are all kind of sad. And then she worked for the ASPCA, which is the dog humane shelter group. And so they show these dogs, and they play her sad music over it to tug at the heartstrings a little bit so that you would donate. And I thought it was a very effective use of emotion, because there are times when emotional appeals matter. When you are trying to get a point across and you feel like it can be too reserved or too research oriented, there are times when the emotion really matters depending on the context. And so what I'm hoping you're hearing me talk about is the connection between the rhetorical context and the rhetorical appeals. Your rhetorical context is going to dictate what rhetorical appeals you're going to use. And that's what the article is really good at explaining, that in a research environment, I would go with researcher more like those appeals that appeal in that situation, like facts, other things like let me show my work to you. In another environment, I might appeal to emotion. Finally, speaking of facts, There's the rhetorical appeal of logos, which is in certain environments, the main thing people want to know is not where you're from. They don't even know they even know who you are. They want to know what is your data, what is your information. And in a lot of contexts, especially in the research world, they do things like blind review, which means your name and background are removed completely from your work, and they are just looking at the text itself. So think about that. Keep these in mind, because as you lay out the rhetorical situation and you talk about audience, purpose, excuse me, message, and then the author, you're also going to be talking about how well an author deploys these things. And so something you can say later on in your, or first in your rhetorical analysis is, here's the academic, or here's the rhetorical context, here's how the author uses appeals. When we move to evaluation next week, you can go, here's the rhetorical context, here's how the author used the rhetorical appeals and used them wrongly, or used them rightly. Because in this environment, this appeal does not work, or will work and does work. So that's what we're going for. That's the type of thinking that you're going to be doing throughout this week and next week, and as we move more toward the rhetorical analysis and evaluation assignment. So let me go back to where I was, which is here. There we go. So that's what we're doing this week. I want to go back then to the assignment to review what I'm asking you to do. So in the space below or in an attached document, please select from one of the articles below and compose a brief one-page double-space rhetorical analysis of the text. Your analysis should focus on the key terms of the rhetorical situation, what we just talked about. And then the author's rhetorical appeals, again, same thing. At this point, you are composing an analysis, not an evaluation. So you don't need to think through how effective an author's communication is yet. Stay with describing the elements. We will discuss evaluations next week. In other words, I want to see you using the terms and defining them before I want you to evaluate accordingly. So I hope this is a good opportunity for you. This tends to be a pretty fun work, because this is all work that we've done throughout our lives. But what understanding rhetoric does is gives us some tools to understand the best way that, one, to evaluate or to analyze a text, but also two, to evaluate that text and its effectiveness as it speaks to a specific environment. So enjoy this week. I think you will really like it. And by the way, for those articles, you need not agree with them, and you may not think that they're anywhere close to what they need to be. That's fine. What I really need you to focus on at this point is how the situation they're entering into. Later on, you can talk about how well they're effective. And I know I've said that 2 or 3 times when I want to, and sometimes when we read articles, we can get really fired up and excited about it, and it will really push us to respond. At this stage, hold back on your response. We just want to analyze. So enjoy this week. I will talk with you soon. As always, please reach out to me with any questions, concerns, anything like that. I am grading your papers. I am working on them throughout this week. I'm going to shoot to have them back to you by this weekend. I just don't like having graded material sit in the inbox. I know you want to hear from me, and I will get those back to you soon. Thanks. Take care.